Hi there and welcome to the channel. Sorry this video is a little overdue, but it is the August wrap in which I reflect on both the quality and the quantity of the books I read in the month of August. Now with regard to numbers, it was a typical month. I read 9 or 10 books, and with regard to quality, it was pretty good in truth, with only one notable exception, which we'll come on to. So without further ado, let's begin. And to kick things off, we have Willa Cather, A Lost Lady from 1920, my first exposure to the work of Willa Cather. I believe I have her O Pioneers and My Antonia somewhere on the shelves. This was really good. It's something like a cross between Madame Flaubert and Sentimental Education, and it concerns a young man who becomes infatuated with this fading aristocratic woman, and we see her and her tawdry love affairs through his eyes. And yes, it was really well done. So Willa Cather, A Lost Lady, well worth checking out. And then another new discovery. It was Isaac Bashevis Singer, a name I was quite familiar with, but had never read any of his work. And this was his Shosha. Shosha is the name of the girl, the principal love interest in this story, and she is rather simple-minded, and we follow the life of a young writer in the Warsaw Ghetto who grows up with Shosha for a playmate, and 20 years later he encounters her once again, and she's barely changed, and neither have his feelings for her. This was, in truth, a pretty wonderful novel. Not much by way of unity. Yeah, it's rather disorganized in truth, but the reason for that is simple. The Nazis are on the march, and so much of this novel becomes simply trying to escape from the forces of history, and there's lots of sex, mysticism, and politics in here. It really was a fabulous introduction to the storytelling powers of Singer. I greatly enjoyed this novel, and I'm going to seek out more of his work, and I did find some more books by him. He's supposedly strongest in his short stories, and so I found a collection, Old Love, and promptly read 2 of them. One of them was really good, A Cage for Satan, about an old rabbi who seeks to imprison the devil. And one night he believes the chance has finally come, only to wake up in the morning and discover he's made a terrible mistake. Very unusual story. And the second one was also very good, The Manuscript. A novelist escapes from Poland with his partner and then discovers that his prized manuscript was not in his possessions, and she, undaunted, goes back and rescues it for him and returns only to discover he has betrayed her while she was on that supposedly suicide mission. That was also really good. Great twist there. So, Old Love by Bashevis Singer. And then I found one more novel by him, Scum, and I read the first page of this and thought, oh my god, this is absolutely terrible, what's going on? And then I searched and discovered it's a novel which was pieced together after his death by his estate and perhaps some academics, and then put out onto the market. I really hate it when people do this. They're supposed to be guarding the legacy of the writer. They're supposed to be the most staunch in their defense of his works, and there they are, diluting his oeuvre with this substandard piece of work which he hadn't sufficiently worked over to show to the world. So that is really disappointing when that happens, and this is going to just be recycled. Then, on the subject of disappointing books, this is this month's stinker, and it is Joyce Carol Oates, and it's called I Lock My Door Upon Myself, which is the title of this beautiful 19th century painting on the front. And the idea of this series of books is that you give a writer an artwork and then they write something inspired by it, and so that's what produces this. I see, looking inside at the little biographical sketch, that Joyce Carol Oates has published over 60 books. Wow! And reading this I can see why. There's a lot of skill in the way this is developed, but no art at all, and so it was really a pretty wretched love story. Yeah, just terrible. Okay, so I locked my door upon myself. I will not be reading any more of Joyce Carol Oates' books. Then something very, very good indeed. It is the late Mattia Pascal, one of the two novels Pirandello penned, and this concerns a man who is presented with the opportunity to launch himself into a new life. He's away on a gambling spree, and while returning to his unhappy marriage, he reads in a newspaper that he's been discovered drowned, and indeed he's been buried, and so he takes the opportunity to abscond. And it's all about the existential questions or issues that bear down upon him having made this fateful decision. And of course, at the end, he kind of trails home and tries to pick up the threads of his old existence. Brilliantly done. The opening chapters really read like Boccaccio's Decameron, and all the way through, there's just so much invention in the storytelling and the directions it takes. Strangely, it reminded me of the great Gothic novel William Godwin's Caleb Williams, but it didn't explore that side of things as much as it might, although it did promise to at one point. No, it wasn't Gothic on the whole, but strongly recommended, highly entertaining. It is Pirandello. All right, next was some travel writing by the great Paul Bowles, and the section I read in here, or the essay, I'm not sure what to call them actually, that's why I hesitated. They're not short stories, they're not truly travel pieces. Yes, I guess they're essays on the theme of travel, and it was about parrots, and I absolutely love parrots. I would love one of my own, and there are quite a few parrot owners in my neighborhood, so I will wander past their shops and look in and see how their parrots are doing each day. And this one gives you the word sitterkine, which is another way to say parrot, either as a noun or an adjective. Sitterkine, try it on your friends tomorrow. All right, so very well written, high tone, and quite amusing in parts too. Paul Bowles. Then, with my undergraduate composition class beginning, I was reading through some material that I thought might have some words of inspiration to share with them, but as it happened, I just read the material myself and let myself be inspired, and then hopefully transmitted that to the class. But what I read was Nietzsche's Untimely Meditations, specifically his essay, Schopenhauer as Educator. And there are some great moments in there. Shall I read one of them to you? It's all about reaching that best version of oneself. All right, Richard Wagner. Okay. This is about evaluating your educators and what one should be looking for. And he just notes on the subject of your nature. For your true nature lies not concealed deep within you, but immeasurably high above you, or at least above that which you usually take yourself to be. Okay, so I was going to pass that on to the students, but instead I just remembered that as the teacher. All right, next, I did use this in class, and it is Tommaso Landolfi and his Words in Commotion, a great collection of the pieces by this Italian master, introduction by Italo Calvino, no less. And as I'm teaching students about language, I use this title story here, which is all about words coming to life. All right, Words in Commotion. In the morning when I get up, naturally, I brush my teeth. Thus, today I thrust the brush with half a squiggle of toothpaste into my mouth and brushed vigorously. And then, with my mouth still full of foam, I sucked a gulp of water from the faucet. I'm saying this to point out that I did everything as usual. I rinsed my mouth and spit, but now, instead of the usual disgusting mixture, out came words. I don't know how to explain this. Not only were they words, but they were alive and darted this way and that in the sink, which, luckily, was empty. One slid, nearly disappearing down the drain, but it caught on and saved itself. They seemed sprightly and happy, though a bit silly, turning around as rabbits sometimes do in cages, or otters caught in rapids. They then decided to climb up to the mirror. Okay, wonderfully surreal there. And finally, I'm not quite done with this, but I'll show you it anyway. It is Balzac's Père, Goriot, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I'm at the end of book 1, start of book 2, when he's making his entry, Eugene de Rastignac, that is, into French high society. And it's just beautifully put together. I'm really enjoying all the bitterness, all the cynicism that one finds in here, particularly the character Vautrin, who is really an expert on how the world works and pretty unscrupulous when it comes to getting what he wants. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that is all my reading for the month of August. I suppose I better choose my book of the month, and it's going to be, imagine a fanfare preceding this announcement. It is Shosha by Isaac Bashevis Singer. Yes, his name really is a tongue twister, isn't it? I'll show you a picture of him hard at work on the back. He was also a notable early exponent of animal rights, and so there are quite a few moments in here to do with the ethical treatment of animals, and this was truly a revelation. I never would have guessed that this writer, who is saturated with the Yiddish tradition of the Poland in which he grew up, was quite going to connect with me so profoundly. But it's really just a brilliant, warm book. And so the Disappointed Man's book of the month for August 2025 is Shosha. Okay, and so there we have it. A huge thank you to everyone who subscribed, commented, liked, and simply watched my videos in the month of August. I'll be back as swiftly as I can, but for now, all that remains is for me to bid you farewell in time-honored fashion. So be safe, be strong, nanu nanu.